Rod Duff, your host.
And I'm producer Barbie.
And together,
we bring you our podcast,
Insights and Straight Talk. And with that, producer Barbie and I are out. Special moment for our show, because today we begin a brand new arc, an arc called the 13 Voices of Mangum. And before we begin, let me just say something interesting. Today is Friday the 13th. Now, most people hear that date and think about superstition, bad luck, something going wrong. But somehow, I don't think that's what today is about. Because today marks the beginning of something that I believe is very intentional. Not just for this show, but for this town. And maybe, who knows, even for me. If you're new to Insights and Straight Talk, this show began with a simple idea. Real conversations still matter. Conversations about life, about families, about the middle class, and the strange and fascinating moment in history that we're all living through right now. And over time, those conversations, well, they grew. Thousands of discussions, guests from around the world, a growing community that now stretches across YouTube, Substack, LinkedIn, and all our other social media. But somewhere along the way, that something even more personal started happening. Life had taken me through a journey I never planned. 30 years building a machinery business, 2 families, a motorcycle accident that put me in the hospital for 3 months, a stroke exactly a year later, and eventually something not always easy to admit publicly, a mental collapse right after that. The kind of moment where everything you thought defined you suddenly just disappears. And when that happens, you ask yourself a question that most people never say out loud. Who am I now? During that quiet season of my life, I started writing poems, thoughts, reflections. In many ways, that writing became part of my healing. Those writings eventually started forming a book, a memoir, a book with a title that probably captures exactly what a lot of people quietly ask themselves when they reach a certain stage in their life. What the fuck happened when I was in my 50s? Now, when I began talking with literary agents about that book, they gave me a piece of advice that honestly surprised me. They said, Rod, if you want a book to reach people, you need a platform. So Barbie and I looked at each other and said, well, what if we started a podcast? And that decision became Insights and Straight Talk, a place where real conversations could happen again. And somewhere along that journey, something unexpected, quite unexpected happened. The road led me here to Mangum, Oklahoma. a town that many people might drive past without even really noticing. But you know what? When you slow down, when you talk to people, when you listen to the stories, you realize something powerful. Small towns like this are the heartbeat of America. They carry history, resilience, community, and they carry hope, which is why today we begin something new, a series called The 13 Voices of Mangum. 13 conversations, 13 stories, 13 people whose lives and experiences help tell the living story of this town. Because here's why. Because before you can talk about the future of a community, you have to listen to the people who built it. And that's where this arc, and that's what this new arc is about. Just listening, learning, and celebrating the voices that make Mangum what it is. Before we go any further, though, I want to thank the organizations and individuals, of course. Wow, there's already 150 people on it already. Thank you for being here. Please subscribe. Please like the episode. Like I said, though, before we go any further, I want to thank the organizations and the individuals who help make this show possible. Our sponsors believe in thoughtful conversation and community building, and we are grateful for their support. We are especially excited to welcome our newest sponsor joining the Insights and Straight Talk community. We are proud to be partners who believe in the same values this show stands for: honest conversation, community, connection, and the future of the middle class. And as this show continues to grow, we're opening a limited number of additional sponsorship spots for organizations and businesses who share these values and who want to support conversations that matter. If that sounds like you, we'd love to talk to you. So today, on Friday the 13th, we begin the first chapter of the 13 Voices of Mangum. And I couldn't think of a better place to start than the story behind why this journey brought me here in the first place. So let's begin. Let me turn this off. Let me bring up the comments and say hello, everybody. I am so glad you're all here. This is going to be a very short show. I know I've said that a few different times on Fridays, but we're 10 minutes in already. So, like I said, I'm going to make this a short show because I don't feel good today. It's been a exhausting week. It's been a very exciting week. Started this morning, started meeting with some of the people in town and started discussing some of the different ways we want to move going forward. But like I said, I'm gonna call this show very, very short today. I've got something stomachy going on in my system, let's say, and so I just want to kick back on my new couch. Hey, I'm at the home studio. I was at the library this morning, and I just, I didn't want to stay there. I just wanted to come home and be here with my couch and just kind of chill today. So today's a really important turn in what we're doing here in Mangum. As you all know, we've started this project, let's call it, meaning that the Regeneration School Project, Voices at the Table, the 13 People Who Whispered series that we're kicking off now supports those other efforts, meaning that at some point, very shortly, and one of the reasons that I partnered with the Mangum City Library is we're going to start having voices at the table. We're going to have teenage minds coming into the library with their parents, sitting in chairs. If you picture this, you guys know the library. So there's a stage there next to the piano. At that point, I don't really want to do it until I get a second camera and I can switch from camera one to camera two, meaning two being towards the audience. But very shortly, we're going to start there. Next Friday, we're going to start, we'll call him for now Mr. Tim, a gentleman from the community is going to come in and talk to us about his thoughts of the Mangum 2030 project, some things that we can do to maybe increase or improve upon our ideas already. So I'm very excited about that. April 3rd, we have 2 people that are running for the school board for the upcoming season. And so I'm very excited. We have both of those people on April 3rd. What is that? Is that I think that's two or 3 weeks from now on a Friday. We're gonna have one, and then the second, Lisa, and Bill. And each of them are running for a position of one seat that needs to be filled. So getting involved in that is pretty darn exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And so we'll be doing that on the 3rd. The election is on the 7th. Basically the same not basically the same format as we did before. Here, you know what? Let me throw up a banner. Boom. There. I started doing that last week. I love those. Look at, I've got a couple of them. See this one, I think, is down below. Ah, that's interesting. Oh, that's because it's not a real one. There we go. So the election for the school board is on the 7th, special election. We need to fill one seat, one position available. So I'm having 2 people on the 3rd. Both of those 2 people are running against each other to fill this seat. So I'm excited about that. We'll be doing that pretty soon. Like I said, April. And then in June, we've started working. We've compiled a list of the senators, representatives, the judicial, those people coming up in the midterms are people that we hope to be having discussions with for our senator, our representative, and like I said, the judicial and several other branches of the government seat, the county seat, a couple of county seat positions. I think a secretary. I think a couple of county commissioner positions, and I believe that while the city manager here in town is going to be a position that's coming up. I believe we're going to be changing that position. Not we are. I have nothing to do with any of this, but the city will be changing that position shortly. Man, I'll tell you what, this has been so much fun. I came here about 5 months ago. I moved here from Chicago. Before that was in California, basically back and forth between California and Illinois for most of my adult life. And producer Barbie and I kind of started heading different directions, and she moved back when her first grandbaby was born. She moved back to California. Beautiful area, Southern California, down by Temecula, close to that area. And yeah, she lives there now, and she's on the show every once in a while. The other day, she surprised me and popped on and said something. That was kind of neat. Um, but we are now. So she moved to California about a year later, I think, something like that. I moved from Illinois, where we both lived together. Like I said, she moved to California. Producer Barbie moved to California, and then about a year later ish, she and I put this plan together, and I moved from where I lived in the northwest suburbs of Chicago out here to Mangum, Oklahoma, for two reasons. Well, for three reasons. And I've said this before, the two reasons. One is because my grandbaby is right over the border in Texas, and I'm closer to my other granddaughter um, to California as well. So there's those benefits. And then there is the cost of living here is substantially less than it is in Chicago or California. And these aren't in any particular order, but the additional reason moving here was to um, be in the great middle class, to be in the rural America. I've told this story before. When I was growing my business, and before the business, when I was growing my salesmanships, as I was doing my work, I would fly to different states and then drive around to different factories that I had appointments with, right? Set up and have discussions. Oh, we got a couple of good questions coming up. All right, cool. Um, but when I would go from factory to factory to factory, these are typically out in more rural type areas, right? I mean, because you're not going to put a plant typically in the middle of a neighborhood, right? So I would drive through small towns on the way, off of freeways, and I always wondered what it was like, these folks that lived here in this town or that town. So I was always curious. I've always been a bit of a curious person, but I was always curious as to why or what their lives were like. So eventually, I decided, through this journey of mine in life, I decided to move to a rural town and see what it was like. And you know what? I thought, when Barbie and I were talking about this early on, I thought, hey, this would be cool. I could be a big town guy, coming from big cities, and I could bring some ideas to this small town community. And what I very quickly learned is I had more learning to do than teaching. It was kind of a neat experience to be in a town that can teach you something about community, about people, about life. Let's hit on some of these questions. Like I said, I'm going to make this a short day. I don't feel good today, and so let's see what we got here. Ray, looks like Ray. By the way, I'm looking for my glasses. These are backup, and they're not they're much weaker than I would like them to be. What was the very first thing that surprised you about Mangum? Oh, great question. Was the very first thing that surprised me about Mangum? The very first thing that surprised me about Mangum was how challenging it is to live in a place that has very few options. Meaning, we've got the United grocery store. There is a single grocery store here in town called the United. It's a chain here in the Southwest I'd never heard of before, but it's a fine chain. But the issue with that is that's all that you really have for options. The gas stations each have restaurants, so you can eat out fairly easily, and so it's not like it's totally. Oh, here, let me do this. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Um, so the first thing that surprised me about Mangum is the lack of choices. Always living in big cities and big towns, big states with big populations. You typically have a lot more choices, right? Than I'm used to not having here. That was a big surprise. So yeah, I'd say that there's a lot of great things, but there's that as well. Gerard, how did the idea for 13 Voices of Mangum first come to you? Wow, you got great questions, guys. Appreciate it. Um, well, it's actually a very easy answer there is a very easy answer to your question there, Gerard. So the idea for the 13 Voices of Mangum came from some advice from people. You like my shirt? Rod. That's not what it means, but I'm taking it on as that. So there's this program that we're working on called Mangum 2030, right? That is the revitalization of rural America. That's the program, right? That's the project. Revitalizing. How do you have a small rural town? How do you change that so that it turns away from shrinking and maybe grows, but certainly maintains? Right now and forever, it's always been said that if you ever want to make it in rural America, right? So you're 18 now, you go to college or you go to trade school or you go to work. Those are the things that 18-year-olds start to think about, right? Somewhere in there. And in rural America, it's if you're going to make it, you got to leave because what are the opportunities here, right? It's a small town, just under 3,000 people. I've heard different numbers um, as high as 2,500 people, 2,200 people. But then I heard the other day that Greer County itself, the whole county has 3,600 people in the whole town, and that includes Altus, which has got to be bigger than here, and several other towns as well. Anyway, what was I? Where was I going with that? So the 13 Voices of Mangum came about because I started talking to some of the people that are on the blind carbon copy list, um, and And rightfully so, there was advice that there's going to be some pushback, likely, as you could imagine, right? There's people here that have old money and don't want the town to change, and everything stays the same. It's good for them. Well, those are the things that we we have to recognize that those things do, or that people will have those opinions and those desires, um, for very fair reasons. But here's the thing: if you keep something the same, you can't. You can, in a world, especially today. But let's just say for all of time, you if you're not moving forward, then you're falling behind. This is a world that continually evolves. The human species, the technology, everything just continues to step forward. And so I've always understood life to be this way, meaning that if you are, and I first learned this in business, if you're staying the same, if you're just maintaining your space, then you are falling behind because the rest of the world is moving forward always. So either you're moving forward faster than the world is, or you're not keeping up, right? So that whole thing comes roundabout to mean that this town, as kids age into their 18s or so, they have a couple of choices: maybe a local restaurant, maybe working in Altus, which is 30 miles away, 27 miles away, working on a farm, or working in the oil wells in West Texas. So there's not a lot of options there for somebody that has dreams and hopes and wishes and wants. So typically, you start seeing people seep out of the society, just kind of move on. Now, remember when COVID hit, right? Obviously, poorly dealt with. Obviously, just a whole lot of shit show going on there, so to speak. But one thing that the COVID did do is change society so that we now have more of this, podcast, Zoom meetings, all sorts of technology came out of, no, technology was already there, but it began to be used, which is pretty exciting. So that has helped. So at the end of the day, the reason that the idea for the 13 Voices came about was really out of a necessity. So there's people here that want to keep it the same, and there's people here that want to move the city forward. So in order to flesh all of that out, what better way to do it than to talk to people in town? Hey, what do you think? What are your thoughts? What do you want to see? What don't you want to see? All those things coming out. Hey, there's well over 300 people here. I appreciate you guys being in. This is going to be a quick show. It's not going to be an hour, I hope, although we've already been going 30 minutes. And we haven't even really hit too many questions. So yeah, the at the end of the day, the reason the 13 Voices concept came about is because at the end of the day, we really need to talk to the people in town and see what their desires and wishes and wants are, and make sure that we're all aligned so that when we move forward, there's less pushback than otherwise would be. let's see. So let's go here to notes. Let's go here to this. I just want to make sure I have this on. Hold on. Give me a second, folks. Then I'll get back to your questions. I just want to get this set up for when we shut her down here a little bit. Our sponsors. So, sorry, I'm going through some notes here. Okay, so right there. What a moment. All right, let's do that. And let's come back over here to, I think we did this one. Let's go to the next one. Sorry, but this is a very big struggle for me today. No glasses. I don't feel good. And Juan, do the locals already know about this project? How are they reacting? Great question. Oh, wow. That's a really, really good question. Yes. So many and every day more of the locals are learning about this project. So far, there's been a little bit of pushback, tiny bit of pushback. Who's this big city guy coming into our little town, and what does he think he's going to be doing? That kind of thing, which I expected, and was going back to the previous question, was a big reason for the 13 Voices push, because I think that's important to get buy-in from the town as well as to get feedback from the town about what they want for their town. This is our home. How do we build it? So far there's been a little tiny bit of pushback, but not really, just more of an approach thing. Again, why we want to have these discussions. But the feedback's been very, very, very positive. Very exciting about that. Let's move on here to Jennifer. What was the hardest part of rebuilding your life after the accident? Wow. The hardest part of everything has been producer Barbie. What I had and what I did and what I didn't do. And, this is a show about real conversation, right? So just in real honesty, I mean, that's been the hardest part, is knowing what I could have and or didn't do in part of my life. And there's been a a couple of times in my life that I look back on, and I wonder why I couldn't have been better than who I was at that time, so that the rest of my life was then better, because I had better people in my life. So there was a whole bunch of stuff that was hard. Obviously, I had to learn how to learn how to get dressed again. I had to learn how to get out of bed, much less get in bed, much less get in a car, much less anything else. Because I have a scar that goes from my armpit, right up here, back a ways, all the way to the center of my back and down to my hip. So it's like a shark bite. If you picture it, it looks like a big shark bite. And what that was is them laying that flesh back, exposing all these broken bones from up here, literally from the top of my head all the way down the left side of my body, and they had to basically put me back together. So all of that was difficult and challenging, and lots of rehab and months and months and months. So I spent 3 months in the hospital, and then a year of rehab after that. And in the middle of that, I had a stroke. Yeah. So all of that was challenging, and then I had a mental breakdown, which actually was the beginning of my new life. That's when it all kind of turned around. You know, unfortunately, like I said, the hard part about that was that I put producer Barbie through that. I had a mental breakdown, but I imposed um, unnecessary ill on producer Barbie. Not just then, just it just when you look back at times in your life, you learn sometimes too late what you wish you would have learned earlier. So that's been the hardest part. Honestly, uh, the loss. Well, it's not even the loss. The loss is there, absolutely, and we're probably. I would definitely say we're better friends than we were as a couple, but those things that you can't take back, those are the hardest parts of those moments. So, Chris Hanna, will you book? Will your book eventually be published for someone to read? Yeah, absolutely. I am. Yeah, absolutely. I'm. You know what? I just need an agent. I have the so okay. So there's fiction and nonfiction, right? There's a bunch of other categories as well, but let's just stay there. Fiction and nonfiction. So a nonfiction is like a memoir. That's what I'm writing. That's what I wrote. Well, let me explain that. Let me explain where this whole thing really is. So I have a book proposal. It's like a business proposal, right? When you do a book, when you do a fantasy or a fiction or some of these other titles that are out there, types of books, when you do a nonfiction, they don't want you to finish the book. They don't want you to write the book. You write a book proposal. And I have one. It's about 55 pages long. And what it is just what you imagine. Here's my proposal for my memoir. I want you, literary agent or publisher, I want you to please represent me, and then we'll work together to finish the book. That's kind of how it goes, from as I understand it. So, you know what? This show is probably going to go an hour. But I'm gonna walk through these questions pretty quick because I'm really starting to get tired. Um, so the book will be finished, and actually now I understand why. Because honestly, the book. So how a proposal is you have the you talk about the industry, you talk about your position in the industry, your book, that position in the industry, some comparative titles that are out there so as they read through these 50 pages, they're making up their mind of whether they want to represent you or not. And amongst those is an introduction. Who am I? Why did I write this book? Here's an introduction to the book. Here's the marketplace. Here's how I see this book fitting in amongst other books on a shelf in a library, let's say, or a bookstore. And then you go through and you take 3 chapters, and you provide 10 pages or so of several pages of each of these different chapters, so they get a sense of your creative writing style or abilities. And then in there you talk about different things. Who am I as an author? What's my history, and so forth. So that's all ready to go. It's sitting there. As I said early on, in this opening on the monologue, I said, the agent said, if you want to sell your story, you better have a platform. So Barbie and I looked at each other and said, hey, let's start a podcast. Well, I was planning on getting a couple, maybe 1,000 people or whatever, and just some sort of a thing, and then go back to, hey, agent, I have a platform. I've got this many people and blah blah blah. Let's grow this together. And I've just never gotten back to it. This thing has become this show has become literally my life, and everything about it. Why I'm here, why I'm in Mangum. I told you earlier, yeah, there's costs, yeah, there's babies involved, and yep, there's these different things. But at the end of the day, I live in Middle America now. So yeah, so far the feedback is going well. Maria, how did you meet producer Barbie? Whoa, okay, hold on. How did you meet producer Barbie and start working together? Oh my God, you guys, you're digging in deep here. Okay, so producer Barbie and I met on uh, something that used to be, it's no longer there, but it's like a Facebook kind of thing. It was a social media, and we were on there, and I happened to see her picture. She had a picture of her and little Matt on the beach, and so I noticed her and said, "Hey, hello," and she responded back, "Hey, hello," or what, however it started, but it was a Facebook kind of thing. I forgot what it was called. God, it was MySpace, or I think it was that one, MySpace, one of those. Anyway, we met on that, and about a week later, we decided to go on a date. We chatted a couple times. I don't even think it was a week. I think it was a couple of days. And I was working for Minolta at the time, and she lives in Ladera Ranch, which is by Mission Viejo. And I was at the time I was living. I think I was living in Yorba Linda. Pretty sure I was. Yeah, I was living in Yorba Linda, but working out in the valley, Simi Valley. So we ended up meeting up at uh, the end of the pier. It's called the End of the Pier. It's a restaurant in Huntington Beach on Huntington Beach Pier. No, the end of the pier was at the other side of the pier. This side of the pier is called Surf City, or Surfside, or something like that. So we met there, and we had a great time. I mean, I was at the bar waiting for her, and she arrived, and we saw each other, and for the next 20 years, we didn't spend a day apart. Um, she Producer Barbie, that's how she and I met. Um, and as I said, I lived in Yorba Linda. She lived in Ladera Ranch. I've sold my place. The Ladera Ranch place is still there, I believe. Yeah, it's still there. And so we became an item. And through that, she helped me, worked on the backside office of my machinery business, and that all the way through until the show came about. And the show was uh, came about because of my mental breakdown. So, Bradley Pomp, how you doing, brother? Shout out to Bradley Pomp. Good to see you, brother. Amazing story, Rod. What made what made Mangum feel like the right place to begin this journey? Yeah, that's a great question, Bradley. Really, really good question. I was telling somebody this the other day, and it's literally this simple. So I told you, producer Barbie and I worked on this together to, okay, well, let's lower your monthly bills. Chicago's costing you 10 grand a month to just breathe. So I scraped a couple of dollars together and was able to move down here. Let's see what made Mangum. So prior to making that move, I went across on the state, the Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, all along the border there. And I did that because I wanted to lower my cost of living, right? And I wanted to be in rural America, right? And I wanted to be close to my grandkids. And all of those things were accomplished by moving to southwest Oklahoma. So when I was going along and I was looking at these different options that producer Barbie and I had kind of mapped out, look at these places and see what you. So I did, and as I was doing that over several days, I eventually got to here, meaning Mangum, and looked at this property, or there were several here. There are several here, and eventually just said, when I walked into this place, which is probably the worst of the shape of the homes, but what there was a feeling, there was just this vibe. When I came into town, I felt a vibe. When I came to this yard, I felt a stronger portion of that vibe. When I walked in the front door, it 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 pulled me all in. This place has a feeling that I needed in my life. And so that's how I knew that this was the place to start my journey. All right. So thank you, Bradley. Great question, dude. Ryan, good show already. Thank you. Love the honesty and real life experience you're sharing. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You know what, guys? We are at 50 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this up. I'm done. I'm tired. I don't feel good. You can sense it in me. I'm sure. I don't have the same energy. I'm glad I'm here. I kind of like this little home studio. This picture of my dad. He played college football. Was drafted by the Green Bay Packers, but that was back if you notice by the picture, that was when they made like, I don't know, $10 a game or something. So he ended up going into the Marine Corps. That's his. Well, there's my granddaughter. I don't know if she's even in the picture. Probably not. Oh, this one she is. There's my granddaughter. There's my Uncle Tim, my dad's brother, and my dad. They were both in the Marine Corps. Different. That's Vietnam. They were in different camps or whatever. Anyway, okay, so I have gone long enough. I'm going to hit 50 minutes here, and I am going to go here. I'm going to go here, and oh shoot, it's all the way. Dang it! All right, I am going to wrap this show up now because I'm just tired. I'm just done. It's not a good day today. It's a nice day out, but appreciate you guys all being here. And I just want to say, hold on. Let me try it. Let's see what this does. Who am I now? Okay. Wait a minute. Oh, come on. Seriously? Sorry, guys. Let me do. What the hell? Did it go? Oh, wow. Okay. So, what a moment, right? I mean, and if today's conversation showed us anything, it's this. The story of a town is not written by buildings or politics, for that matter, or headlines. It's written by people, by the voices of the individuals who live here, who raise families here, who run businesses here, who serve their neighbors, who quietly keep the heart of a community beating every single day. And that's exactly what this new arc is about. Over the coming weeks, we're going to hear from teachers, from business owners, community leaders, public servants, families who've been part of Mangum's story for generations, literally. Voices that together form the living story of this town. Because before we talk about the future of Mangum, we have to understand the people who make it what it is. And this is where you come in. If you're watching today and someone's story comes to mind, someone who represents the heart of this community, I want you to reach out, okay, please. Tell us why their voice matters. Because the goal of the 13 Voices of Mangum is not for me to choose the voices. The goal is for the community itself to reveal them. Make sense? And if you're new to the show today, welcome. Appreciate you being here. This conversation doesn't stop here. You can follow everything we're building through on our YouTube channel at Rod Duff 1939, our Substack writing series. We do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Mondays is Barbieisms. Wednesdays is Poems and Pages. And Fridays is Friday Mic Drop. So that's where the growing community around Insights and Straight Talk comes from. Rod Duff and producer Barbie, every week, new conversations unfold across all those platforms. And if you believe in thoughtful conversation, community building, and the power of people coming together around ideas that matter, if you're one of those folks, consider subscribing, sharing the show, and inviting others into this conversation. Because movements don't grow through algorithms, they grow through people. So today we begin the first chapter of the 13 Voices of Mangum. And Mangum, I believe your story is only just beginning. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time on Insights and Straight Talk. Because I'm Rod Duff, I'm your host. But with that, as I always like to say, I'm out of here.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.